Rowe is also the top-placed home rider. He's currently third, 2.5 minutes behind Lance Armstrong, and a little under 2 behind Michael Rasmussen. Ivan Basso is fourth at 2:40. Jan Ullrich, Andreas Klöden, Floyd Landis and Alexander Vinokourov are in a clutch of riders between 4 and 5 minutes down. Then you've got to look down to 31st for another Frenchman, Sandy Cazard. Last year's race leader and national hero Thomas Voeckler is currently an hour and 3/4 back in 128th. All in all then, good news, it's a bit thin on the domestic front. Here's Ned.
So where do the French look now for their next hero? Christophe Moreau, the subject of repeated loving close-up coverage, is putting up a valiant effort to restore national pride, but it's not the same. No Jar Jar, of course, who won on Bastille Day in '95 and again in 2001. And they no longer have the man who made the 14th of July his own last year in Saint-Flour, as well as mastering the tearful post-race interview. No, he swapped the saddle for the commentary box, and boy, do they miss him. Actually, it's been heartbreaking for the French to lose their national hero, Richard Virenque, no longer riding the Tour, the man they love to love, the thin white Duke of the Mountains. Luckily for them, though, they've got a ready-made replacement. Remember Thomas Voeckler, briefly to be seen on this Tour wearing Virenque's cast-offs. His heroics from last year when he carried the yellow jersey through Bastille Day have earned him enduring star billing in France.
It hasn't changed everything, but for my sport, for my rider, my sportman life, it's a little bit different, but I'm still the same guy, quiet, but just like the Tour is arriving, it's a little bit different because many pressure on me, and I just try to do my best, and we'll see what happens.
One thing's for sure, this won't happen again. After he got his hands on the yellow jersey when he was part of a long breakaway on stage 5 last year, he defended it through thick and thin, right into the Pyrenees, where 10 days later he clung on by just seconds. The French public just couldn't get enough of him.
That day it was exceptional because he's not a great climber at all. He can't climb, but with just his heart and his will, and knowing that he had the yellow jersey in front of huge French crowds, he said, "I'll go for it," and he kept it by 24 seconds. That's the kind of little, heroics of the Tour that the French love. It's enormous for a rider to hold the yellow jersey for days. It's like in cricket. If a batsman stays on for like 5 days in succession, he becomes a hero.
Refreshingly, Voeckler has never allowed the adulation to turn his head, and he remains extremely realistic about what he can and can't achieve.
I'm not a rider who was born for the Tour. For me, the cycling is all the season, and not only the Tour de France, even if it's the main race of the year. But I know that I'm not able to win one day the Tour de France, not even on the podium. But if I can do one or two things, a few nice things after my career, it's okay for me. I'm happy with it.
Well, stage 12 could be a good one for a French day out as we move from the Alps into Provence. It's rolling country, and it's going to be difficult for the pack to keep things under control. Before we get on with it, though, a quick update on Dario Frigo, the Italian rider whose wife was found with what's believed to be EPO in her car. The pair were released from police custody last night, but they've been formally placed under investigation for importing and using doping products. Now, the first news of the day at the start in Briançon was bad news for Tom Boonen. He was in obvious pain from a knee injury yesterday after a crash, and he did not start, which means the points competition has lost its leader. So the sprinters were suddenly out front instead of hanging off the back as they were in the Alps. Bradley McGee took the first intermediate sprint of the day, with Robbie McEwen second and Thor Hushoff third. Hushoff being the new leader of the points race now Boonen's gone. Also gone, and this is a rare sight, is one of Lance Armstrong's teammates. Manuel Beltran came off early in the stage, and although he struggled along with the help of the team car and the doctor's vehicle for a while, he was eventually forced to abandon. So too was Nicolas Fritsch of Saunier-Duval, the worst of all possible stages for a Frenchman to have his numbers ripped off on national television. Now, as we join the action, 3 Frenchmen, including Sandy Cazard, have escaped. But there are 10 others with them, including, interestingly, Thor Hushovd and another green jersey contender, Stuart O'Grady. Robbie McEwen isn't there, but one of his team members, Axel Merckx, is. So an intriguing situation developing out on the road as we join Phil Liggett and first Paul Sherwin.
This is the front of the race. We're looking now at around about 1 kilometre to go to the summit of this climb. And this is the second category climb of the Col de Saint-Jean, 88 kilometres covered. And this is an interesting formation. There's Thor Hushovd. Hushovd has seen this occasion as extending his lead in the points classification, because with the abandon this morning of Tom Boonen, this is the man who tomorrow will wear the green jersey as leader of the points classification. But the closest challenger is in the group with him there, number 121. Stuart O'Grady. He's got the route map out there. You can just see who's holding in the middle of his handlebars a little white piece of paper. Well, the race organisation here print a copy of the race handbook for the riders. It's a small 6 by 3 inch piece of paper, piece of cardboard that the riders take with them every day, and it gives them a point of reference as to exactly where they are on the course. And O'Grady will be very happy to know that he's already got one of the second category climbs very much behind him. There is another one down towards the end. It's the Col de Corobin, and that's at 156 kilometres covered. It climbs up for about 12 kilometres, but it's a fairly gradual climb at 4.5%, and I don't think it really should affect that group down towards the end.
Well, 3:24, the gap, you can see the crowd. It's an area where the Tour doesn't often come. It used to come here a lot up until the 60s, then it seemed to go away. We're so far south. This is a part of the Alps we don't always see, because you're rather restricted in the roads you can use without changing countries. But Juan Manuel Garate has decided to prove to the world that he is a climber after all, and he's nipped ahead here to take the climb of the Col Saint-Jean. Goodness knows how many people are on the road today. It's a beautiful day for enjoying the Tour. It's Bastille Day, everybody in holiday mood, and the weather has been turned on. Sandy Cazard in second place. Looks as though Stuart O'Grady may have crossed that line third.
Well, O'Grady's just being attentive. I think he will have crossed off that second category climb on his agenda here this afternoon. He'll be looking forward to getting over the second category climb up towards the end, because there's a nasty climb, the Col de Corobin, 156 kilometres covered. The 2 or 3 weakest climbers in this group at the front would have to be Giovanni Lombardi, who's second from the back, Thor Hushovd and Stuart O'Grady. But on a day like today, you don't necessarily have to have climbing legs. It's a question today, I think, of the man who has recovered the best from the 2 very difficult days we had in the Alps.
It really is beautiful today, but people were asking that they would prefer if they organised the Tour de France in the summer, because the weather over these first 12 days have been very up and down, but it's brilliant now. Of course, some riders love the heat, some riders love the cold, and they react differently. Now it's a different problem for some riders. We'll see. The biggest problem Lance has had today on what should have been a fairly tranquil day, I think, is the loss of Manuel Beltran. Because here's a rider he relies on heavy, is a great pacemaker, so solid, never seems to be off form, always willing to work. A silly crash, an injured knee, highlights the risks in the peloton, I think.
Well, as you say, a silly crash, but that's one of the things that can happen on every day on a stage of the Tour de France, because unfortunately for him, he was the only rider to go down, and the riders were actually going reasonably slowly at the time. And those, to me, are always the worst crashes, because instead of sliding, you actually go down very hard. We've been talking about the weather changes, and the temperature has started to climb up a bit. We've come up to about 30 degrees Celsius, and one man who really enjoys the hot weather is the big German, Jan Ullrich. So the gap now, look at that, still 96 kilometres to go to the finish. That's around about 2.5 hours of racing over terrain like this with the weather conditions that we've got. And we've got a stage today where we could see a serious amount of leg braking in the main field. Of the men in the breakaway, 4 of the riders have previously won stages in the Tour de France. Stuart O'Grady won back in Grenoble and again in Chartres. Thor Hushovd won a very good race in Bourg-en-Bresse, and of course last year he was a winner of a bunch sprint on the run into Quimper. David Moncoutier broke his duck last year with a win in Figeac, which was basically a win in his own territory. And of course Patrice Algon won a stage in Pau, and that was a long time back in 2002. Well, the main field going over the summit of the Col de Saint-Jean, 3 minutes and 40 seconds in arrears. But for them, they won't be too worried at all, because none of the riders in that leading group are of any danger at all to Lance Armstrong in the overall classification.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Patrice Algan et je vous donne rendez-vous sur le Tour dans 2 minutes.
Well, you may be wondering what's happened to the former England football international Geoff Thomas in his quest to ride the entire route of the Tour de France. Geoff, you may remember, is himself in remission from leukemia and is taking on the Tour to raise money for leukemia research. Well, you'll be pleased to know Geoff's made it across the Alps, crossing over this very spot at the Col de Galibier last weekend, and he now finds himself riding deep into the Pyrenees. Today he finds himself tackling the murderous stage 15, featuring 4 Category 1s and a final all-category climb to the finish. So a nice easy day in store for him then. By the way, if you want to find out more about Geoff's challenge and get behind him, then the best way to do that is to visit his website, which is www.geoff-thomas.com, and then offer him your support. By the way, we'll hopefully be speaking to Geoff this weekend as he gets nearer and nearer to Paris.
Hey, day 17! I wish.
Back to the here and now then, and stage 12, and the sun baking down on the peloton. A very hot afternoon indeed. Now 2 riders have fallen by the way and abandoned since you were last with the race. Robert Hunter from Phonak and this man, Angelo Furlan of Domina Vacanzi, who'd been involved in that 2-man crash on the sprint to the finish line in Karlsruhe. But the rest of them are still up and running and closing in on the final kilometres of today's stage.
And this is the town of Digne-les-Bains now, with the peloton at 4 minutes 40, 42 kilometres to race. And I don't think that peloton is going to see the breakaway today now, because they are simply not getting any closer.
Well, it's a question of numbers, isn't it, really? You've got only 4 riders at the front end of the main field who are chasing, doing the majority of the pacemaking, and I think Axel Merckx here has got the information that his team is not going to catch up. He's decided to have a go for himself as we go towards the summit of the Col de Cordobain, and in fact the summit of the climb is just 30 kilometres to go to the end.
Well, Axel Merckx tapping out the rhythm. Dad Eddie won here the last time we came in 1969. It would be absolutely wonderful if Axel could do it. He doesn't win many races like Dad did, of course. He won 12 in his life. He's won one this year, won a stage of the Dauphiné Libéré race in June. He's been the Belgian champion. He got a bronze medal in the Olympic Games in 2004 in Greece. So he has had an extremely good career, but no one can compare to his father, of course. They're on a little steady drag here. It is quite a drag out of town. We know that because we stayed at the top of it last night, and we were remarking on just how this could cause a little springboard perhaps tomorrow when they came here. Well, they're here now. We knew that we felt there'd be a breakaway, but I didn't think it'd be this big with 13 men. Here comes an attack. Don't think we're too surprised about this. This is a typical move by Axel Merckx. Dad was the winner, don't forget, in 1969. Axel would like to emulate him.
Well, Axel will know that. He looks through the history books. He knows absolutely everything that his father did on a bike, and he would certainly like to try and emulate it. This is the slightly steeper part of the climb, and look at this. O'Grady and Hushoft are going straight out of the back. O'Grady's going to jump, though. He wanted to see the position of Hushoft. Those 2 men, they're having their own personal battle here, while Axel knows that if he wants to win the stage here this afternoon, he's either got to get away on his own or win it from a small group.
Well, they chased for 14 kilometres, those 2, to catch up this breakaway today. And now they might be throwing that chance away. And no, I don't think that's the case. I actually think that Hushoft is not going well on this climb.
He's suffering on this climb, but look at his face. Yes. His face is showing all of the signs of pain, but what he will do if he can is try and stay with O'Grady. Big, strong Axel Merckx now setting the tempo at the front. David Moncoutier has come across there in the Cofidis jersey. Jose Luis Arrieta, then Sandy Cassar, then Franco Pellizotti. They're looking back to see what sort of damage they've done. They've put a lot of riders under pressure. Poor old Stuart O'Grady and the man who's with him, Thor Hushoft, instead of fighting out for 1st and 2nd, if this continues, they might be fighting out for 12th and 13th. Moncoutier over the top now. He too is going to try and false company with the front end of the main field. A good move by Moncoutier. Won a stage in the Tour de France last year. Goes around this corner. We get up to the steeper part of the climb now. It really does start to bite in for Moncoutier, but he's taken advantage of all of the moves done by everybody else. That was a nicely timed attack. As he gets over the top, though, it's still 30 kilometres to go to the finish, but he's opened up a very good advantage. And O'Grady, well, he's just got to try and recover if he can, because he's still got to try and think about getting himself some points on today's stage, which will move him ahead of Robbie McEwen in the overall classification of the Sprinters' Prize. But now it looks as if Team Cofidis could be getting themselves a victory here on Bastille Day, because this is a very good move. Angel Vicioso, he too is not quite able to get his foot onto the back end of the bus, and he's struggling to come back up to this leading group, which has slimmed down a fraction over the last couple of kilometers. So that's Pellizotti at the back, Merckx at the front.
Well, we knew there'd be attacks here on this climb. I expected Juan Manuel Garate, who's riding very well in the yellow and red strip there, but I suppose being Bastille Day, you do best to put all your money on a Frenchman going for it. David Moncoutier, who won last year in Figeac, is trying to make it another stage victory this time around.
Well, he's had a good season. He was in great form in the Dauphiné Libéré just a couple of weeks before the start of the Tour de France. He finished 6th overall. He had a win at the start of the season too in the Tour of the Pays Basque, but in the first week of the racing, he, like a lot of other riders, took the risk of sitting at the back end of the main field. He's lost a bit of time in the overall classification, but that's not really what's important to him. He's 42 minutes back, and I think for him, he's decided in the latter part of his career that instead of trying to ride high in the overall standings, he's just going to go for individual stages.
Right, he's ridden, this will be his 6th Tour de France, the best finish in 2002 of 13th. And that's about where his ability is going to take him, I think. So he's looking now at what would be an extraordinary day for him today. Lance Armstrong has said if a Frenchman wins on Bastille Day, he becomes the latest superhero of the sport. And that's absolutely true. He's got 10 seconds at the moment. The peloton.
Welcome back to stage 12 of the Tour de France, just 35 kilometres to go now. Well, before the break, we saw David Moncoutier on the attack. He's stretched his lead now over the group to 20 seconds on the Col du Cordoban. So we have a Frenchman in the lead on Bastille Day, and we'll shortly rejoin the race to see if he can carry the tricolour all the way to the finish line. Just time, though, now for a cup of coffee. Well, Chris Boardman has been persuaded to leave the reassuring gloom of his TV truck and to join me outside for a coffee in order to answer a couple of your emails, or do your best anyway. Rick Bartlett from Swindon in Wiltshire has written in with this first question, and it's actually a good one. It's one that a lot of you have been asking. Why is there a lack of British riders taking part in this year's Tour de France? I know we have some world-class riders, but where are they? Well, Chris, you've got a job with British cycling, and you've got a job to answer this one as well. Go on.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm actually qualified to answer that question, but yes, we do have some very classy riders. Most of them have been concentrating on track disciplines, and we saw them in Athens last year. Probably most notable is Bradley Wiggins, who actually rides for the Credit Agricole team. Because he rode the Tour of Italy earlier this year, it was deemed a little bit too much for him to do the Tour de France in the same year, but certainly something possible for the future. Yeah, Wiggins is the name that a lot of people will have heard. I mean, you say for the future, can we see him on next year's Tour de France, do you think? I think it's quite possible he could be riding the Tour de France, even likely next year. With one eye on winning the prologue, presumably? Well, that would be the obvious goal for him, and I think he's already starting to concentrate on that. OK, excellent. Here's a slightly more statistical question. It comes from Tony Lane in Radcliffe, Manchester. I would like to know the largest winning margin of all times on the Tour de France in comparison with the largest modern-day margin. Well, if you take the modern-day era to mean post-war, then you have to look at Fausto Coppi's win in... Year, I don't know. 1952? 52. OK, that winning margin was 28 minutes, 17 seconds. But the largest win of all time was actually the very, very first Tour de France in 1903. That was Maurice Garin, and his winning margin was 2 hours, 49 minutes and 45 seconds. Lance Armstrong, incidentally, his first ever Tour de France win in 1999, that was his biggest winning margin, 7 minutes, 37 seconds. And the smallest winning margin ever? Probably Greg LeMond's, 89. Definitely Greg LeMond's, his win over Laurent Fignon in 89, and he won by just 8 seconds. Yeah, Phil Liggett has the commentary.
This is going to be incredible. Fignon is bouncing off the barriers here. He's lost the Tour de France. The crowd has realised it. Laurent Fignon has lost the Tour de France. Right on the line as he comes over. 55 seconds is countdown. He has lost the Tour de France by 8 seconds. Can you believe that? Laurent Fignon has lost the Tour and Greg LeMond has won it.
From the sublime Phil Liggett to the faintly ridiculous here from Nigel Fakin in Fareham, Hampshire. Now, here's another one for you, Chris. Can you tell me, brace yourself, can you tell me what the toilet arrangements are for the riders? Do they get many Paula Radcliffes? Chris? Well, I am qualified to answer this question. We don't get many Paula Radcliffes, but the riders do need to lose some fluid, shall we say. Now, most of the time, they'll wait for a quiet spell in the race and just stop discreetly by the side of the road, but sometimes that's not possible and they have to perfect the art of going on the move. Now that's something I'm going to leave to your imagination. Excellent. Well, you asked the questions and we try to answer them. Do keep them coming though. The best way of doing that is to visit www.itv.com/Tour de France and then just follow the prompts. That's enough toilet questions though.
Wondering, in fact, if David Macoutier will stay away. 33 kilometres to go to the finish now. He's working his heart out. It's a big moment. To win on Bastille Day is a very special moment for a Frenchman. There were 3 of them in the original breakaway of 13. The breakaway has split, but there are still 6 riders chasing. And once over the top of the climb of the Col de Colobane, which is about 2 kilometres or so to the top now, and then he's got a little bit of downhill to the Col de Lorme, which isn't a great challenge at all. Once over the top of the Col de Lorme, 10 kilometres to the line, and he'll be cheered all the way by the French now, and this will really put his name on the map.
Well, it's a big chase, I think, behind for Stuart O'Grady, but Axel Merckx's group has lost themselves 30 seconds. But this man very shortly will start to climb up to the final big summit of this year, this day's stage, and that's the Col de Colobane. But he does have that final little pimple on the horizon, the Col de Lorme, which is situated very nicely at 10 kilometres to go to the line.
This is a fine piece of riding by Moncoutier. We saw it in Figeac last year, and he's at it again now.
Very similar tactics by him in this year's Tour de France as he had last year on the road to Figeac, because exactly the same situation. He joined a breakaway that got a big advantage over the main field, and as he got that little bit closer to the finish, he took off. There is the main field just going under that banner, which the riders probably in the leading group thought was the top of the mountain. But sorry to say, guys, you've still got 4.5 kilometres to go to the top.
Just looking at 1 or 2 of the riders in the peloton stretching the backs, they probably think they're over the top as well. But the hard bit is still to come here, as we can see. Now,
Junti.
Is that the top? I'm not sure even that is top. These banners are put out on the course today. This is Junti going back.
Still a couple of kilometres to go to the summit. Junti 136th overall at the start of the day. A long way behind Lance Armstrong, but again, finding a little bit of courage there, just getting out of the saddle. The gradient has got a fraction easier, so he picks it up. The team manager's cars come by him, and he will hope that before they start the descent, he will manage to integrate the group.
So the peloton at 6:28, 31 kilometres, 20 miles to race. And the peloton are having their first day off now on the Tour de France. They're able to cruise a little bit here. This is the rider who decided Bastille Day was for him. David Moncoutier, 3 hours, 40 minutes in the saddle, and there's still a chance he's going to win it.
Well, he's setting himself up to have a very big advantage here, but he still, once he gets over the summit of this climb, got a long pursuit down towards the end. And it's not really that easy, because he does still have to face up to, after the summit of this climb, the climb of the Col de Lorme, which goes up for around about 3 kilometres. But he will be very motivated here this afternoon, because this is the Tricolore Day. This is the Bastille Day, the 14th of July, the day that all of the French want to win on. And he may well be able to do that, just as Richard Virenque did last year on the road down to Saint-Flour. And what a difficult day that was as well.
It certainly was, but Saint-Flour is always in a difficult part of the world. But he got the victory then for Bastille Day. The French have not had a victory yet in the Tour de France, so now is the day to have one. 40 seconds to the pursuers, 1:35 to the remnants. Thor Hushoff dangling in 1:50. The peloton, they'll be heading out towards 7 minutes.
Grady will probably be a little bit saddened by the fact that he wasn't able to stay on the back end of this group. He was hoping so much this afternoon that he'd get himself a big lead. And there you can see that is O'Grady. I'm looking to see where Thor Hushoff is. They've been joined there by Stefan Schreck. Stefan Schreck was a few moments ago riding alongside Thor Hushoff. So now there's a 3-man chase group behind the group of Axel Merckx. It's Stefan Schreck, Giovanni Lombardi, and of course Stuart O'Grady.
Just looking at the excitement here on the faces of the French as they cheer the leader up this mountain. They're trying to drag him over the top now. There's the banging on the door, because that is the top of the Col de Colobane. 31 kilometres now. A lot of it is downhill. Watch these descents here. They're very narrow and sinuous. This is the chase group. It's not a big time gap just yet, as they now come up towards the top. Cheers there for Bobby Julich. The French flags, Norwegian flags flying on the right, as Axel Merckx has virtually set the pace all the way up this climb. Garati is planning on his best finish here too. He's in second behind Merckx. Merckx looking to see if anybody's going to come through and steal the points. I think Garati might have a go, and he is too. He's taking second place. He's climbing up the King of the Mountains with that. Merckx over in third. And little Arietta hanging on at the back. Well, 1:35 across the field. They still have a chance to catch him.
Hola, soy Juan Manuel Garate y seguimos viendo el Tour después de la publicidad. Hasta pronto.
This is the final climb of the day. Once he goes over the summit of this climb at the Col de l'Orme, actually they're telling us it's 9.5 kilometers to go. Move now by Angel Vicioso. Good move by this man from Liberty Seguros. Axel Merckx is the man taking up the pacemaking behind. Merckx there, covered by Sandy Cassar, covered by Juan Manuel Garate, the champion of Spain, and then Patrice Algon. Well, I'm surprised at that move there coming from Vicioso, because if it had all come back together, he would certainly be my favourite for the win in the sprint.
Well, you know, Paul, he's been doing a lot of gesticulating, is giving us the impression he might be feeling the pace. He is tired now anyway. But he made the move, maybe just to try to get them going, because he sensed now the gap is back to 40 seconds.
It's a good move by this man. All he has to do, the interesting thing about being in a lone breakaway like this is you ride at your own pace all of the time, whereas behind in a breakaway there's an acceleration and a deceleration. So his average speed is probably just locked in at about 42 kilometers an hour, whereas behind they'll ride at 45, then 38, and their actual average speed might be a kilometer an hour lower than his.
Well, there is a hint of the crowds that we're going to see as we race into Digne-les-Bains. This will be the 10-kilometer banner to come now. As he comes up to it, he's still on the Col de l'Orme, but very shortly the next banner will be the top of the climb. He should get that. Look at the crowd here now.
He's got 500 meters to go to the summit of this climb, and then it goes down all the way to Digne-les-Bains, and it should, over that distance, take him around about 12 minutes. Merckx now wants to have a go. He wants to get off the front. Matched very admirably there by Sandy Cassar, who's actually been pretty good over the last couple of kilometers. And of course Angel Vicioso getting up there. Look at Merckx. He wants to, he's going, he's actually opening up the gap.
Well, this is a huge effort by Merckx, and it's not to get second place over the hill. And you know, the big surprise of the day could be Angel Vicioso, the rider there who can sprint, is now nailing every attack down. He's gone over there in third place. Alga is in fourth. Pelazzotti has gone fifth.
Well, this is the top of the climb for the man who has led for the last 20 kilometers. This is David Moncoutier just going over the top, and the time gap is coming through at 32 seconds for this man over the group containing Axel Merckx. Merckx is not asking for any help at all here, looks over his shoulder. He realized that these guys, they've been away for such a long time. If they want to win the race, they have to do it now.
Well, Vicioso now the danger here in third place.
Garate taking it up. This is the top of the climb where they will stop the clock, and again it is still locked in there at 31 seconds. It's going to be touch and go for David Moncoutier, but once he's got to the summit of this climb, he'll be able to take some respite, and on the descent he'll be able to pick up the pacemaking. Now this is good for him. Once you see a breakaway group like that spread across the road, that brings down their average speed, while this man is still riding consistently at 42 to 44 kilometers an hour. His body right now will be saying, stop this pain that you're giving me. But you know what? When you're in a situation and you think you can win, you can push that pain barrier just a little bit further up. And that's what happens when you're in a situation when you realize that you can win. 31 seconds then to the group containing Axel Merckx, and more than 2 minutes and 30 seconds back to Stuart O'Grady and of course Thor Hushovd in that group, who today will probably fight it out for around about 10 or 11 points, but not that important to them. The important thing is stretching their advantage over Robbie McEwen. So it's 31 seconds at that point. Still 10k to go.
For me, Paul, the big danger now, if he gets back, will be Angel Vicioso. I think he'll win this race. He is riding extremely well. He's never finished the Tour de France. He crashed out on stage 6, 2003. He abandoned on stage 10 last year, but he is a fast finisher.
Oh, he certainly is. We saw him win that pretty impressive stage in the Giro d'Italia, where he got disqualified for using all of the road. In fact, he used both sides, if my memory serves me correctly.
But he was wrongly disqualified that day, and the riders agreed with everybody. They said he should be given a stage.
It was reasonably undangerous, I suppose, but he has won a couple of stages this year of the Escutal Bicicleta, a race in the Basque Country. Stuart O'Grady and his group come up to the summit of the climb too, and they are a fair distance behind. But O'Grady, I think, will be quite happy, even though he hasn't managed to win himself the stage here, because he knows that Team Cofidis have got a lot of publicity out of today, especially the 14th of July.
Somebody's going to have to attack, because otherwise they'll be victims of the sprinters.
This is very good for David Moncoutier. If they keep accelerating, slowing down like this, the next time we get a time jack to Moncoutier, it's going to be close to the 40-45 second mark, and if he's got that at 5 kilometers to go, I don't think they will ever see him.
I don't think they can catch him. Merckx is the one that wants to get there and win the stage, and they're just all not helping him. The gap is edging open. This man, I think, is nosing away to a fabulous victory for France today. It's been a while in coming. First one this year. Best day to choose. As we look here now, he can't pedal any more high gear. He's in his top gear here, and he's pushing it as fast as he can pedal. David Moncoutier, 13 career wins, and he's about to move one notch higher and get rid of that little monkey off his shoulder, number 13.
I'll tell you what, it's still locked in at 30 seconds from Moncoutier to the group here, which contains Axel Merckx, Vicioso, Juan Manuel Garate. Merckx is absolutely frustrated there, just throwing his arm up, because he feels that not everybody in this group is putting their full effort into pulling back this lone leader.
Sandy Cassar, he's the man made the most gains today. 17 minutes down at the start. He might finish as much as 10 ahead today. 5 kilometers to go. 3 miles. It sounds better, 3 miles. It gets him a little bit closer to the flag. All he's going to do is keep looking down at those feet, checking where he is and driving on. Won't look over his shoulder now because there's no effort can be saved now. It's win or lose everything.
One of the reasons he keeps putting his head down like that, by the way, is to make himself just that fraction more aerodynamic. You just caught a quick glimpse of Digne-les-Bains in the distance. 5 kilometers to go for the 7 chasers. There is a certain amount of disarray in this group now, Phil.
That, I think, is what's costing those valuable couple of seconds. And the closer we get, of course, the more messing about, because some of these guys will want a second place on the stage of the Tour de France, and they won't help. And that disorganises the chase. Garate there is freewheeling to the front because he can't pedal any faster just now.
That's a big advantage for Moncoutier, because that means they'll all go down this part of the course at the same speed. 4 kilometers to go now for David Moncoutier. The last time crackling over race radio was in fact 28 seconds, so it's come down a little bit, but this man cannot flinch, Phil. He has to give everything he's got. In fact, instead of 100% here, he must be giving 110.
Well, just look at the speed of this boy now. He got away on the lower slopes, or the higher slopes of the Col de Colombat. I thought it was proving to be a bit too soon, but he had no other place on the course. A man that rides like David Moncoutier could escape. He had to go there, he had to gamble, and it looks as though it might work. 28 seconds, they're nosing closer, but it's not fast enough.
It's 28 seconds at 5 kilometers to go. It's 28 seconds at 4 kilometers to go. They're not moving in fast enough, and this man, looking at his pedaling style here, is nicely locked onto his handlebars. The top half of his body is nice and solid. He's cutting around these corners as straight as he can, making it the shortest possible distance to the finish. It doesn't look to me as if he's losing any power at all in his pedaling style.
They're just nipping through the streets here now, through this game. 3 kilometers from the finish for David Moncoutier. It'll be a French-Mexican wave now all the way to the line for him. There goes Vicioso again now, looking over, and just trying to mark him out there is Junti, I think it was. No, it wasn't. It would have been Arrieta. He's marked in Merckx in second place now. This is Arrieta nearest camera. They're that close, look. We're at the same roundabout now. It is nothing, but they can't get any closer. I thought they would have had him when they came off the mountain on that wide road.
The tough thing is, in a race like this, on a day like this, where we've been in the average mountains, it's been up and down all of the time. It's still 28 seconds for this lone leader. But the problem is, everybody is in the same physical state. They're all pedaling to the maximum of their ability, and they're all tired, but this man is the one who took the risk.
How lonely is it out there now on a day of the Tour de France when you're French and it's July the 14th and you're racing in front of your own public, and he's rising to the occasion now at 2 kilometers almost. He'll see the banner very, very shortly. This is a huge effort, and of all of his victories, this will be his best ever, and he's had some good ones. There's the 2 kilometer banner, and the clock starts now for the chasers.
Well, it was 28 seconds to go. He's now basically looking at about 2.5 minutes of effort. I can't really believe that he's going to lose half a minute in the last 2.5 minutes of the race. He can add this victory to his victory last year in exactly the same style, a solo effort over the last few kilometers. That was on the road to Vichy-Ac, and that was in his own home area. And it was similar to weather conditions too, because it was a very hot day. The group behind now zigzagging over the road. This will really be playing into the advantage as they go under 2 kilometers to go, and it is still 28 seconds.
Well, there's Vicioso. He's laying off the back here. I don't know if he's going to try and do anything, but he's Algan is having none of it. He's following him. back at the front, 1.5 kilometres to go. Once he sees the kite, he can celebrate. Nobody will cover it in 30 seconds faster time than this man. He will be on a tidal wave of noise. He's French. It is one of those great moments in any Tour de France.
Well, you can hear the crowd now. They are all behind this man. The Tour de France hasn't been here since 1969, and now it's coming back on Bastille Day, the French's greatest celebration. The next banner he will see, Phil, will be the kite, which indicates just 1 kilometre to go to the finish, picking his way precariously around that corner, and there is the kite.
There is the kite at 1 kilometre to go. Look at these people here. They all know, of course, who he is because they've been watching him on the big screen. And they went completely silent when they thought the group was coming back. They're not coming back now. Enjoy the moment.
That is the first time, Phil, over the last 10 kilometres I've seen him look back over his shoulder, and the reason for that was he just wanted confirmation. The race directors just told him he's got a 32-second advantage. He isn't going to enjoy this until the last 300 or 400 metres because he wants to make sure there's no silly comebacks. Well, David, I can tell you this, there won't be today.
32 kilometres or 20 miles. He has led today's stage of the Tour de France, and in the next 100 metres or so he will just start to celebrate. Time for this man is of no consequence. Today it's all about winning a stage in the Tour de France, and you choose the day the French love most, July the 14th. The only other day of the year they close the Champs-Élysées is for the arrival of the Tour de France, and he'll be there in Paris on the 24th as well. David Moncoutier from Figeac last year to here in Digne-les-Bains this time around. That was a superb ride.
I don't think he can believe it, Phil. That is joy on his face. He really wanted this. It was a risk to go out with 32 kilometres to go to the finish, and that's what pays at the end of a day like this. These guys have lost out completely. Axel Merckx over there on the left-hand side, Vicioso at the back of this group. He will probably be the man to lead them home, although I can't see the dark points there tucked in.
They are all going to do almost come to a zero speed here as they start now to try and begin the sprint. Watch out for that rider in blue. They're afraid of him. He would have been the likely winner, I think. Garati sitting out the back. And there we go. That's the move. Arietta, the non-sprinter, has opened it up, and quickly on his wheel is Vicioso. Sandy Cassal's got his wheel first. Cassal's made the big gains today. Probably more than 10 minutes for the overall. Cassar is going to try and make this a French 1-2 as he comes over on the right of our picture here. Vicioso has dived after his wheel now. Vicioso is going to wait, and he's going to come by and I think take it on the line. It was very, very close. It might have been Cassar second, Vicioso third. So a win for David Moncoutier today as the peloton is going to come home in about 10 minutes time. Well, O'Grady is going to have to lead out the man in green, Thor Hushoff. Normally Hushoff these days is the quicker one, who is the most tired, as Gino Lombardi goes for the line. O'Grady now kicks and grits his teeth, moves over on the outside. Hushoff stuck right into his slipstream. This is going to be a matter of honour for Stuart O'Grady, but here comes Thor Hushoff. Hushoff on his wheel now is going to be touch and go, and Hushoff takes it. Hushoff gets the advantage over Stuart O'Grady.
Well, the home win looked a long shot when there were 3 Frenchmen in a group of 13, but once the infighting started behind David Moncoutier, he was a cert for the win, even if it took him a while to relax and stop looking over his shoulder. In fact, he had nearly a minute on the non-chasing group at the line, with Sandy Cazard making it a French 1-2 ahead of Spain's Angel Vicioso, and Patrice Algon making it 3 home riders in the top 4. Behind them, Thor Hushoff beat Stuart O'Grady for 9th place, which was worth an extra point in the green jersey competition. 9.5 minutes later, Robbie McEwen, having failed in his attempt to have the break chase down, was looking to mop up the crumbs in the sprint for 14th.
McEwen just off to our right with the yellow helmet on, 4th wheel. He's looking for the move. You better watch it. It's coming on the other side of the road. McEwen is going to have to stretch his legs here. He's going to have to go on the narrow road, I think, as the sprint starts for the line now. He's trying to be given the lead out. He's leaving it a little bit later, is he? He's in 4th wheel here, and he's being tried, and now he comes on the left. There's nobody in this race could beat McEwen, and that was nearly a nasty switch. But there we are. McEwen takes it, and Foster got second.
Robbie picked up 7 points for that 14th place compared to the 12 Thor Hushoff got for finishing 9th, and behind, safely out of the way of that late flurry of activity, were all the big names. Thomas Voerkler's not having the tour he did last year. He was 149th, And as well as the first man on the stage, the French also had the last, Nicolas Jalabert, in 162nd place. Well, he mistimed his break by a day last year, winning on July the 15th. But Moncoutier got it right this year, and we couldn't possibly ask him to reflect on the significance of it in anything but his native language.
C'est vrai que c'est la fête nationale, donc c'est souvent symbolique durant le Tour de France. Et c'est vrai que les Français, on avait hâte d'être dans l'échappée. D'ailleurs, on a pas mal attaqué. Et on fait d'ailleurs 1 et 2. Et c'est vrai que, bon, comme je dis, c'est un peu symbolique. Ouais. Sur le Tour, c'est pas évident de gagner une étape. Souvent, c'est les costauds qui gagnent et les sprinteurs, donc grimpeurs sprinteurs. Donc après, pour les baroudeurs, il n'y a pas beaucoup d'étapes et donc faut pas les louper. Les occasions, faut pas les louper. C'est vrai qu'aujourd'hui, je me suis dit que c'était aujourd'hui ou jamais et je suis vraiment allé au bout de moi-même pour la gagner.
Yeah, I said David I was going to attack at the bottom of the climb because I knew half the bunch would be chasing me. So you know, I said as soon as I get caught, you counter-attack, and it's not often that you say something and it comes off, but. You know, hats off to David, it was an awesome ride. The objective of the day was to win the stage, and we've done it. We should deserve a bit of champagne.
Stuart O'Grady, I believe, speaking in his native language too, and Lance Armstrong in his natural habitat, up on the podium to get his 7th yellow jersey of the Tour and the 65th of his career. No real change at the top of the standings, though, where the contenders all kept an eye on each other. In fact, no change at all until you get to Sandy Cazar, whose second place today moves him up 9 minutes or so from 31st to 19th. The one place there was change was in the green jersey competition, where Tom Boonen's withdrawal makes Thor Hushovd the new leader, a first for Norway on a day that was otherwise an exclusively French affair. Well, we should extend Bastille Day congratulations to David Moncoutier for that great win, the first French stage win of the Tour. But Chris, you and I were shouting at that chasing group on the run-in. I suspect people were at home too. What is the point of jockeying for second place when you could be working together to catch the man in front and then go for first place?
Well, the problem with the large breakaway, or rather the good thing really, is there's a lot of people to share the work, but the danger is always if one person starts to miss turns, everybody else starts to become paranoid and think, well, I'm not going to work and tow you to the finish. The only chance they've got is a breakaway. Axel Merckx tried it, and if he'd got away on his own, he probably would have got across, but it didn't come off, and so he basically destroyed the breakaway.
Easy win for David Moncoutier in the end, although he put a lot of work into it on the way there. Now, a day off for Lance Armstrong, really, but he's lost one man, Manuel Beltran. We're off into the Pyrenees pretty soon. How much of a loss is he going to be?
Well, he's probably down to the strength that he had last year. He had a very, very good team there. It's going to be difficult for them to be beaten. It won't be easy for them on stage 15. That's the big day. Lots of mountains there, but I still think he's going to be okay.
Yep, stage 15, the biggest climbing day of the entire tour, will be on Sunday when we're live on ITV2. Now, there'll be no solo breakaways tomorrow, I can virtually guarantee it, because the green jersey competition is back on by popular demand for one day only. Stage 13 is as flat as we've seen for a week, and we won't see another one like it until the final week. It's relatively short too, just 152 kilometres from Miramar to Montpellier. So last bunch sprint before the Pyrenees, I think, and we'll have it for you here on ITV2 at 7 o'clock tomorrow. See you then. Rowe is also the top-placed home rider. He's currently third, 2.5 minutes behind Lance Armstrong, and a little under 2 behind Michael Rasmussen. Ivan Basso is fourth at 2:40. Jan Ullrich, Andreas Klöden, Floyd Landis and Alexander Vinokourov are in a clutch of riders between 4 and 5 minutes down. Then you've got to look down to 31st for another Frenchman, Sandy Cazar. Last year's race leader and national hero Thomas Voeckler is currently an hour and 3/4 back in 128th. All in all then, good news, it's a bit thin on the domestic front. Here's Ned.
So where do the French look now for their next hero? Christophe Moreau, the subject of repeated loving close-up coverage, is putting up a valiant effort to restore national pride, but it's not the same. No Jar Jar, of course, who won on Bastille Day in '95 and again in 2001. And they no longer have the man who made the 14th of July his own last year in Saint-Flour, as well as mastering the tearful post-race interview. No, he swapped the saddle for the commentary box, and boy do they miss him. Actually, it's been heartbreaking for the French to lose their national hero, Richard Virenque, no longer riding the Tour, the man they love to love, the thin white Duke of the Mountains. Luckily for them, though, they've got a ready-made replacement. Remember Thomas Voeckler, briefly to be seen on this tour wearing Virenque's cast-offs. His heroics from last year when he carried the yellow jersey through Bastille Day have earned him enduring star billing in France.
Manuel Beltran came off early in the stage, and although he struggled along with the help of the team car and the doctor's vehicle for a while, he was eventually forced to abandon. So too was Nicolas Fritsch of Saunier-Duval at the worst of all possible stages for a Frenchman to have his numbers ripped off on national television. Now, as we join the action, 3 Frenchmen, including Sandy Cazard, have escaped, but there are 10 others with them, including, interestingly, Thor Hushovd and another green jersey contender, Stuart O'Grady. Robbie McEwen isn't there, but one of his team members, Axel Merckx, is. So an intriguing situation developing out on the road as we join Phil Liggett and first Paul Sherwin.
This is the front of the race. We're looking now at around about 1 kilometre to go to the summit of this climb. And this is the second category climb of the Col de Saint-Jean, 88 kilometres covered. And this is an interesting formation. There's Thor Hushovd. Hushovd has seen this occasion as extending his lead in the points classification, because with the abandon this morning of Tom Boonen, this is the man who tomorrow will wear the green jersey as leader of the points classification. But the closest challenger is in the group with him there, number 121. Stuart O'Grady. He's got the route map out there. You can just see who's holding in the middle of his handlebars a little white piece of paper. Well, the race organisation here print a copy of the race handbook for the riders. It's a small 6 by 3 inch piece of paper, piece of cardboard that the riders take with them every day, and it gives them a point of reference as to exactly where they are on the course. And O'Grady will be very happy to know that he's already got one of the second category climbs very much behind him. There is another one down towards the end. It's the Col de Corobin, and that's at 156 kilometres covered. It climbs up for about 12 kilometres, but it's a fairly gradual climb at 4.5%, and I don't think it really should affect that group down towards the end.
Well, 3:24, the gap, you can see the crowd. It's an area where the Tour doesn't often come. It used to come here a lot up until the 60s, then it seemed to go away. We're so far south. This is a part of the Alps we don't always see, because you're rather restricted in the roads you can use without changing countries. But Juan Manuel Garate has decided to prove to the world that he is a climber after all, and he's nipped ahead here to take the climb of the Col Saint-Jean. Goodness knows how many people are on the road today. It's a beautiful day for enjoying the Tour. It's Bastille Day, everybody in holiday mood, and the weather has been turned on. Sandy Cazard in second place. Looks as though Stuart O'Grady may have crossed that line third.
Well, O'Grady's just being attentive. I think he will have crossed off that second category climb on his agenda here this afternoon. He'll be looking forward to getting over the second category climb up towards the end, because there's a nasty climb, the Col de Corbin, 156 kilometres covered. The 2 or 3 weakest climbers in this group at the front would have to be Giovanni Lombardi, who's second from the back, Thor Hushovd.
I'm not a rider who was born for the Tour. For me, the cycling is all the season, and not only the Tour de France, even if it's the main race of the year. But I know that I'm not able to win one day the Tour de France, not even on the podium. But if I can do one or two things, a few nice things after my career, it's okay for me. I'm happy with it.
Well, stage 12 could be a good one for a French day out as we move from the Alps into Provence. It's rolling country, and it's going to be difficult for the pack to keep things under control. Before we get on with it, though, a quick update on Dario Frigo, the Italian rider whose wife was found with what's believed to be EPO in her car. The pair were released from police custody last night, but they've been formally placed under investigation for importing and using doping products. Now, the first news of the day at the start in Briançon was bad news for Tom Boonen. He was in obvious pain from a knee injury yesterday after a crash, and he did not start, which means the points competition has lost its leader. So the sprinters were suddenly out front instead of hanging off the back as they were in the Alps. Bradley McGee took the first intermediate sprint of the day, with Robbie McEwen second and Thor Hushovd third. Hushovd being the new leader of the points race now Boonen's gone. Also gone, and this is a rare sight, is one of Lance Armstrong's teammates.
It hasn't changed everything, but for my sport, for my rider, my sportman life. It's a little bit different, but I'm still the same guy, quiet. But just like the tour is arriving, it's a little bit different because many pressure on me, and I just try to do my best, and we'll see what happens.
One thing's for sure, this won't happen again. After he got his hands on the yellow jersey when he was part of a long breakaway on stage 5 last year, he defended it through thick and thin, right into the Pyrenees, where 10 days later he clung on by just seconds. The French public just couldn't get enough of him.
That day it was exceptional because he's not a great climber at all. He can't climb, but with just his heart and his will, and knowing that he had the yellow jersey in front of a huge French crowds, he said, "I'll go for it," and he kept it by 24 seconds. That's the kind of little, you know, heroics of the tour that the French love. It's enormous for a rider to hold the yellow jersey for days. It's like in cricket. If a batsman, you know, stays on for like 5 days in succession, he becomes a hero.
Refreshingly, Vukler has never allowed the adulation to turn his head, and he remains extremely realistic about what he can and can't achieve.